are welcome to the module on principles and methods of teaching senior high school physics. And you are once again welcome to session 5 of unit 3. And in this session, we'll be looking at communication during physics teaching and learning. My name is Patrick Ej. By the end of this session, you should be able to explain the term communication and list the 5 key elements in the communication process, state the ways in which communication can take place, explain the barriers to communication, and finally, suggest some ways to improve communication between you and your students. Now, what is communication? So when we talk about communication, it is a process by which understanding is created between the communicator and the audience when a message is sent by the communicator through an appropriate medium. So you realize that the key word when it comes to communication is understanding the information that is being sent. So in the classroom situation, you realize that the teacher becomes the communicator and the learners becomes the audience. There are times too the teacher will be an audience as well. So there must be that understanding anytime an information is being sent from the communicator to the audience. And understanding between the communicator and the audience is very much important. We must take note of that. So that is the most important aspect anytime communication occurs. And whether the communicator and the audience have understood each other will depend on the feedback that the audience will give to the communicator. So it is based on the feedback that will be received by the communicator that will determine whether the audience really understood the information that was being sent. Now, audience. So we have been mentioning audience. And we mentioned that in the classroom, our students are the audience. And because they are the audience, it is very, very important that we always try to do an analysis of the audience anytime we are trying to send an information. And in the analysis we are talking about, we must do analysis on the nature of the students. And so in our analysis, we must consider the learner's mental maturity, their level, their prior knowledge, which is related to what is to be communicated so that the communication can be effective. We must also communicate effectively. And if we want to do this, you, the teacher, must put yourself in the place of your audience and package your message accordingly. So sometimes perceive yourself, put yourself in the shoes of your students, and then based on that, package the message that you will send to your learners. Now, when you, the teacher, you put yourself in the shoes of your learners in order to have a feel of how your learners will be able to decode the information that you send to them, then that phenomena or that activity that you do is called the audience orientation. So audience orientation is basically you, the teacher, putting yourself in the place of the audience, trying to understand how the audience will perceive the information that is being sent in order for you to package your message accordingly. Now, in the communication process too, the audience orientation is very important because in the classroom, the audience is in control in the communication process. In the classroom, it is our learners. They are in control because they will be giving you the feedback. And so audience orientation, you must always try as much as possible to put yourself in the shoes of your learners. And because the audience are in control during the communication process, they respond to communication selectively. So they would determine what they should hear and what they should see. So they would determine, okay, let me listen to this part of the lecture. Let me listen to this part of the information that the teacher is giving. Let me see what the teacher is trying to present or paste on the board. The learner do this selectively. So we cannot force the learners to listen or look at the things. You can tell them, look on the board. Well, the person may be looking, but you just realize that the person is just looking somewhere different from what you are thinking. And this phenomenon is referred to as audience sovereignty. So in audience sovereignty, the learners, it is the phenomenon where learners or the audience now becomes selective in responding to an information. They become selective in responding to what they must see and as well as what they must hear. Now, what are the key elements of the communication process? And communication involves 5 key elements, and this is illustrated in the diagram below. So in the process, we have a sender, we have the message, we have the channel, we have the audience, and the feedback. So in the classroom, the sender or the communicator is the teacher. The message will be the kind of information you are sending to the learners, and the channel becomes the means through which your learners use to decode the information that you send to them. And we have the audience who will be our students, and there should be a feedback from the audience to the sender. And based on the feedback that will be given, will enable the communicator or the sender to know whether the information that was sent to the learners was really understood or not, whether they really got the meaning of the exact information that the sender tried to send to them. So what are the ways of communication? And in the classroom, communication can be either verbal or non-verbal. So verbal can be the spoken word, and the non-verbal we can use gestures. These are means or ways that we can communicate. And so some ways in which we communicate in the classroom include we can use spoken word, we can use written word, touch, smell, body movement. We have the pictorial, which talks about posters, films, photographs. We have the optical or the use of colors. For instance, black or red clothing would denote mourning, dressing. All these are means or ways that we communicate in our classroom. What are the barriers? What are the various barriers to our communication? And when we talk of barriers, we are talking about the factors that prevent the receiver, here the audience or the learner, from understanding the message that is being sent to them. And some of the barriers to communication in the physics class include the following. So we have verbalism, when the teacher is making use of so many words to explain a concept. We have reference confusion. Reference confusion is when the learner finds it difficult to have a link between the current information and their prior knowledge. We also have inadequate verbal skills on the side of the teacher, sometimes, or the communicator. So sometimes when you find it difficult to express yourself for the audience to understand what exactly you are trying to communicate to them, it also becomes a barrier to their understanding. We have daydreaming. Here the learners will be in the classroom, but their minds are not going to be on what you are presenting. So at the end of the day, they are going to lose a lot of portions of the presentation or the information that is being sent to them. And we have physical discomfort. So in our classrooms, sometimes the sitting arrangements, sometimes the lighting situation in the classroom, the temperature in the classroom, all these are conditions that will discomfort the learner. And at the end of the day, it makes it also difficult for learners to perceive or understand the kind of information we are trying to send to them. And we have semantic noise. When there are some teachers, their voices, they have such a high pitch such that when they talk, you feel their voices as piercing. And whenever settings occur, you realize that students will not feel comfortable, and hence they find it difficult trying to listen to what you are saying. Or you are using an audio or a video and the sound coming out is unbearable in the classroom. And the final one is visual distractors. So sometimes as a teacher, you'll be teaching, then you start throwing your marker up and catching it, or your chalk, you throw it up, you'll be catching it. Sometimes you just be, trying to do your tie well if you are wearing one. You try to do a whole lot of activities. And anytime you are doing this, sometimes the learners will now tend to focus on what you are doing rather than the information that you are sending to them. How can we then improve communication? Now, we mentioned that communication can be verbal or non-verbal. So we can improve verbal communication by speaking directly with confidence. And we must also speak in an easy, friendly, and a conversational manner. We must also use appropriate words. Don't use words that your learners have to consult the dictionary before they can get the meaning of it. And use appropriate body gestures. They are very, very important. And pronouncing words clearly and distinctly. So, if there is a word you are finding difficulty in its pronunciation, it's better you consult a colleague teacher or somebody to help you know the actual pronunciation, so that you don't pronounce the word and the learners will get confused about what exactly you are trying to present to them. And using reasonable tone, so neither too loud nor too low. It must vary. You must vary your tone to attract the attention. Sometimes when you want to highlight a key point, you can make your tone a bit higher so that learners will understand that, okay, anytime sir or madam is trying to highlight a key point, you realize that the tone of his voice goes up a bit. So the students always were able to attract their attention. And also not speaking too fast or too slow. Now, you can also present information in ways that will interest your students. Understand that not everything that interests you will interest your students. So whenever you are presenting information, also make sure that it interests your students. Use suitable examples. They are very, very important. They are said that they're able to draw the attention of your learners to what you are presenting to them. And do not think what may interest you is necessarily interesting to your learners. And eliminate possible noises that might distract your students' attention. So if it is a video, test it, check the sound that is coming out of it to ensure that it is not going to disrupt the kind of message or information you want to give to your learners. And be aware when a student is faking attention. Sometimes the learner can be looking at you, but their mind will not be on you. And use a variety of channels of communication through the use of teaching learning resources. So you can use audio, you can use videos, you can use the audio visuals. All these are channels that you can use to help your learners. And proceed from the known to unknown and concrete to abstract. Anytime you start from what they already know, you realize that they become interested in what you are doing before you proceed to the unknown. And give praise whenever praise is due. So when students are answering questions rightly, clap for him, clap for her. These are things that really motivate our learners during the teaching learning process. Now, students, in this session, we have discussed the nature of communication as applied to the physics classroom situation. And we also identify some barriers to communication as well as ways we can improve on our communication in the classroom. Now, students, as we bring this session to an end, let us have a take-home. Why may it be said that communication is not the mere transmission of the message? And why can silence from a student